Everyone is talking about the SpaceX-xAI deal like it's just another Elon Musk headline, a giant valuation, a billionaire moving assets around, a flashy merger built to dominate the news cycle for 24 hours and then disappear. But I think almost everyone is reading this story the wrong way. Because if you strip away the headline, this does not look like a random transaction. It looks like alignment. It looks like consolidation. It looks like a man pulling pieces off the board and snapping them into position. And once you see that, the story changes completely. Because then this stops being a story about a deal and starts becoming a story about a system, not just an AI company, not just a rocket company, not just a car company, not just a satellite network, not just a chatbot, a system. A system that could connect frontier models, software agents, global connectivity, chips, vehicles, satellites, launch capacity, and eventually even AI compute infrastructure beyond Earth. Reuters tied the SpaceX-xAI merger directly to that broader logic, reporting that the deal unified Musk's AI and space ambitions and fed speculation around orbital data centers. And that is where this story gets dangerous, because the more you zoom out, the less this looks like Musk buying time. And the more it looks like Elon Musk building an AI empire. Maybe that sounds dramatic. But by the end of this video, I think you'll see why empire may actually be the most accurate word here, and why this merger may be the clearest sign yet of Musk's real endgame. So let's start with the surface-level version. On February 2nd, Musk announced that SpaceX had acquired xAI in a deal valuing SpaceX at about $1 trillion and xAI at about $250 billion for a combined valuation around $1.25 trillion. Reuters described it as a record-setting transaction that surpassed even the Vodafone-Mannesmann deal from 2000. That alone is huge. But giant numbers are not the reason this matters. The reason this matters is that the deal instantly changed the way you have to think about Musk's companies. Because as long as those businesses looked separate, you could treat them like parallel bets. Tesla was one bet, SpaceX was another, xAI was another. Maybe X was part of the media distribution layer. Maybe Starlink was just broadband. Maybe Optimus was just another crazy Musk side quest. But the merger makes that interpretation a lot weaker. Because once SpaceX and xAI move under one structure, the cleaner explanation is no longer Musk has many ambitious companies. The cleaner explanation becomes Musk may be trying to connect them. And that is a radically bigger story. Because once you switch from portfolio to ecosystem, the deal suddenly starts to make sense. Here's the first big point most people are missing. This is not interesting because SpaceX bought xAI. It is interesting because of what each side represents. xAI is not just a model company, it represents the intelligence layer, the reasoning layer, the agent layer, the software brain. SpaceX is not just a rocket company. It represents launch, orbital access, satellite manufacturing, and long-horizon engineering. Put those together, and this stops looking like a weird billionaire merger. It starts looking like vertical integration for the AI age. And vertical integration is where the real power is, because in the old software world, you could win by owning one layer. But AI is starting to look different. The future winners may not be the companies with only the best model. They may be the companies that control the most layers of the stack at once. The model, the agent, the compute, the deployment, the distribution, the infrastructure. That is why this deal feels bigger than a merger. It feels like system design. And here's where it gets more interesting. Musk's companies already had the outlines of this structure before the deal. Tesla had real-world hardware, AI chips, and robots. SpaceX had launch and satellite infrastructure. xAI had the frontier model ambition. Even before you add anything else, those are not random pieces. Those are complementary layers. That does not prove a master plan, but it does make the empire theory much harder to dismiss. Because empires are not built by owning one breakthrough. They are built by controlling dependencies. And if that is what Musk is doing, then this merger is not just a headline. It is a reveal. But if you think that's the biggest part of the story, it isn't, because the merger gets much stranger the moment you ask a different question. Why would a rocket company want an AI company badly enough to pull off the biggest deal in history? That question has an answer. And it's where the story jumps from ambitious to almost sci-fi. Because Musk is not talking only about bigger AI labs on Earth. Reuters reported that he has talked about AI compute in space within 2 to 3 years and tied the SpaceX-xAI merger to ambitions around space-based data centers. Reuters also noted that US space stocks rose after the deal partly because investors saw it as a push to expand AI infrastructure outside Earth. That is not a normal corporate synergy, that is a different category of bet. And suddenly the merger starts looking less like SpaceX bought an AI startup and more like Musk may be trying to connect future AI demand with infrastructure only SpaceX could plausibly build. That is an enormous difference. Because once AI becomes a race constrained by power, cooling, land, regulation, and capital intensity, the game stops being just about making a smarter model. It becomes an infrastructure war. Who can train more? Who can deploy faster? Who can scale cheaper? Who can escape Earth-based bottlenecks first? That last question sounds absurd until you remember who we are talking about. Most AI companies can lease compute, some can build data centers, a few can raise insane amounts of capital, but almost none of them control rockets. Almost none of them control satellite networks. Almost none of them can even pretend to build an orbital compute layer without sounding delusional. SpaceX can. And that changes the way the whole merger reads, because the moment space-based AI infrastructure enters the picture, xAI is no longer just a chatbot company inside a bigger corporate shell. It becomes the intelligence engine attached to a long-range infrastructure play. And if that sounds like an endgame, that's because it might be. Now let's get to the real question. What is Musk actually trying to build? Not the headline answer, not the PR answer, the deeper answer. I want to be precise here. I am not saying we know the plan with certainty, we do not. But when you line up the merger, the orbital data center narrative, and the way Musk keeps connecting his ventures, one theory explains the move better. And that theory is this: Musk may be trying to own the AI stack behind the future, not just the AI model inside it. That is a much bigger ambition. Because frontier AI is no longer just a software race, it is also a compute race, an energy race, a deployment race, a capital race, a network race, an infrastructure race. And if that is true, then build a better chatbot is too small a goal. The real prize becomes control over the layers that future AI depends on. That means intelligence. That means agentic software. That means chips and servers. That means data movement. That means the pipes. That means distribution. That means physical deployment. Reuters' February 4th analysis is what really makes this read incredible. It connected the merger to a future of solar-powered orbital data centers. That is why Endgame is the right frame, because this does not look like incremental optimization. It looks like a bid to shape the battlefield itself. And if you can shape the battlefield, you do not just compete better, you force everyone else to compete on terrain you control. That is what the strongest empires always do. They don't just build products. But here's the problem. A viewer could still say, fine, that sounds smart, but maybe this is all too abstract. Maybe people are projecting some giant strategy onto Musk just because the deal was huge. That is a fair objection. In fact, it would be the right objection if we did not already have evidence that the integration logic is spilling into real products. And that is where today's development matters a lot. Today, Reuters reported that Musk unveiled a joint Tesla-xAI project called Macrohard, also referred to as Digital Optimus. According to Reuters, it combines xAI's Grok as a high-level navigator with a Tesla-developed AI agent that interprets live screen video and acts through keyboard and mouse inputs. Reuters also reported that the system is designed to run on Tesla's AI4 chip alongside xAI's NVIDIA-powered servers. That is a huge clue. Because for the first time, the empire theory stops sounding abstract and starts showing up in product architecture. Look at what is happening there. xAI is contributing the language and reasoning layer. Tesla is contributing the action layer, real-time execution logic, and chip integration. This is exactly what ecosystem behavior looks like, not separate companies making separate things, but different parts of the machine beginning to interlock. And that matters because it changes the emotional weight of the merger. Before Macrohard, you could still tell yourself this was mainly financial engineering or corporate simplification. After Macrohard, that gets much harder. Now there is a visible path from merger logic to integrated products. And once that path becomes visible, the phrase AI empire stops sounding like rhetoric. It starts sounding literal. Now we get to the most powerful, and maybe most uncomfortable, part of the story. Because the real advantage here is not owning one killer model. It is owning a closed ecosystem, or at least moving toward one. And that distinction matters. Think about the layers again. At the top, the model layer. Below that, the agent layer. Below that, chips, servers, and compute. Below that, networks, satellites, launch, and infrastructure. Below that, deployment into vehicles, devices, robots, and software environments. The more of those layers one person controls, the less dependent they are on rivals. And dependency is where weakness lives. So if Musk can reduce dependency across multiple layers at once, he is building leverage. That is the word here, leverage. Because whoever controls more of the stack gets to move faster, bundle more aggressively, experiment more broadly, and survive shocks that would break a thinner company. And that may be the deeper logic behind all of this. Not just win AI, but build a system that is hard to challenge because it owns too many connected pieces. That would also explain why this story feels bigger than OpenAI versus Anthropic versus Google benchmark talk. Benchmarks are one level of competition. Stack control is a deeper one. If Musk is serious about that, then he may not be trying to win just one AI cycle. He may be trying to build the environment future AI lives inside. And that is a much more dangerous kind of ambition. Now let's keep this honest. This could absolutely break down. In fact, some of the hardest parts of the story are exactly where the hype is highest. Reuters reporting on orbital data centers stressed the obvious problems. Radiation, heat management, economics, and feasibility remain serious obstacles. Even if the direction is real, the timeline could still be long. And that is just the space part. Integration on Earth is messy too. Different engineering cultures, different timelines, different incentives, different talent dynamics, different public company and private company pressures. The more ambitious the system, the more things can go wrong. And there is another risk people ignore. The tighter the ecosystem, the greater the blast radius when something fails. If the model disappoints, the agent layer suffers. If the agent layer stalls, the deployment story suffers. If the deployment story weakens, the whole empire narrative starts to wobble. And if the infrastructure vision proves too expensive or too early, then the endgame suddenly starts looking less like genius and more like overreach. So yes, the upside here is extraordinary, but the failure mode would also be extraordinary. And that tension is exactly why the story is so compelling. Because this may be one of the boldest AI-era consolidation moves we have seen, or one of the most overextended, maybe both. So here is the real takeaway. The SpaceX-xAI deal should not be remembered as just another insane Elon Musk transaction. It may end up being remembered as the moment his separate companies stopped looking like separate companies, the moment the pattern became visible, the moment it started to look like Musk was no longer building individual ventures, but assembling an AI empire. That is why the story matters, not because the number was huge, not because the headline was loud, but because the merger may reveal something much bigger than a transaction, a coordinated attempt to connect intelligence, infrastructure, deployment, and future compute into one machine. And if that machine keeps taking shape, through deals, through product integration, through shared chips, shared models, shared infrastructure, and maybe one day even shared compute beyond Earth, then this will not just be a merger story. It will be the origin story of a new kind of power, a power built not on one killer app, not on one benchmark win, not on one viral chatbot moment, but on ownership of the stack itself. Maybe this is Musk's endgame, maybe it isn't, but for the first time, the pieces are fitting together in a way that is hard to ignore. And that is why everyone calling this just a merger is missing the real story. This may be the moment Elon Musk's AI empire stopped being a theory and started becoming visible.